And what's going on, Bruin Nation? LAFB fans, Bruin fans, it's the Madman here. So excited to see all of you and so excited to recap an incredible day of Bruin sports yesterday with the win over Gonzaga. But first, I promised you guys over the course of the week that I would have a surprise for you. And I have a surprise for you indeed. In the spirit of Christmas, in the spirit of Santa, in the spirit of Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, I too have a present for all of Bruin Nation. It is the one, the only, a man who needs no introduction, who's coming back and visiting us for the holidays, the great Will, the Thrill, Decker. What's up, brother? So great to see you. We got Will and the Madman, the Thrill and the Madman, back in the house together here for the holidays. So great to see you, my brother. How are you doing? How's the holidays been treating you? How's Pepperdine basketball been treating you?
Yeah.
And just how's life, my friend?
Life has been fantastic, man. I mean, we took in one of the greatest UCLA games in recent memory on the hardwood yesterday. Had a great time, man. It's been a month where we haven't had as much consistent communication as we're usually, used to having. And it was tough, but yesterday we kind of just had a blast and just had one of the best times possible. So much to talk about and just had so much fun, man. So it's going to be a long, wide-ranging conversation that you're bringing me on to do. I got to be honest, it's a little weird with you bringing me in and us kind of having the roles reversed here.
Totally.
It's going to be a lot of fun, man. I'm just so excited to be back in the saddle of, the good graces of LA Football Network.
Oh, Thriller. Oh, this is the roles have reversed. This is sort of one of those like old Lindsay Lohan Disney movies or something, or, where it's like you've rolled the roles have reversed between sort of host and commentator and analyst and all that great stuff. But Thriller, we got to start here and say, missed you so much. Yesterday was so much fun for our audience. Will and I had the opportunity to catch the Gonzaga UCLA game together. What a fun experience that was on Thrill. We got a chance to be on the floor. We were behind Norman Powell. And so, everybody was sort of making a fuss given, he was such a great Bruin and a Carden Clipper. We got to be on the Jumbotron. We were dancing behind him and, sort of caught on Norman's Instagram as well. I had UCLA Athletics kind of send me a photo of the two of us, sort of cheering everybody on. So we found a way. I had people texting me and saying, Madman, I saw you on the Jumbotron, you and Thrill, so what a great evening and day that was to catch up with you and have a great time. And Thrill, let's sort of jump into the game, huh? I mean, what an emphatic victory there. 65-62, the Bruins prevail. First victory over Gonzaga since 2015. You said it best, Will. UCLA exacting some sense of revenge over the past few postseasons. Plus, there was that game against the Chet Gonzaga team in the regular season a few years ago. We got that monkey off our back with Gonzaga, and it sort of creates a new rivalry now. Again, it's a new chapter to the rivalry. The Gonzaga faithful, there was a small group, probably 1,000, but mighty. I mean, they were very, very loud. And I must say, Thrill, I thought the UCLA faithful showed out. There was probably 13,000, 14,000 Bruin fans there, really loud, really proud, decked out. Really felt the Bruins spirit all over the Intuit Dome, which is such a beautiful facility. And in terms of the game, Will, it was starting to follow that similar script of UCLA basketball the last few years that we've always been really scared of. Early sort of first half lead, double-digit lead, Bruins climb up 11, 13, only to see that lead evade. And then down the stretch, there looked like there was a little bit of hesitancy on offense. A couple of missed free throws, and we're saying, oh, my God, here we go again. Is this going to be Gonzaga the last few postseasons? Is this going to be Arizona in the Pac-12 championship game 2 years ago? Is this going to be some of those SC games in years past where leads have been blown? But Sebastian Mack finds a way with that incredible and one to reestablish the lead. The Bruins hang on 65-62. Eric Daly Jr. led the way with 18 points. Kobe Johnson, 12 points with 4 big second-half three-pointers. Sky Clark had a really nice floor game, 11 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. And then Lazar Stefanovic really did his thing, particularly early in the game, and got to 10 points. But the Bruins now move to 11-2, Will, 2-0 in Big Ten play. Now the meat of the conference schedule starts. They should be firmly into the top 20 moving forward and hopefully make that run into the top 10 and into the top 5 that I believe they deserve to be. So just overall impressions, thoughts on the game, Will, and where you're seeing this team moving forward.
And I want to share the screen a second just to kind of get in with Mr. John Rothstein here, because he has one of the greatest tweets. Mick Cronin, more consistent than a few good men on a rainy Sunday right there. It was a great game, man. And this was a huge game for UCLA fans. I don't have to explain that to the fan base. We remember March Madness 2021. We remember March Madness 2022. These were very elite UCLA basketball teams that really had a chance to take the whole thing, but Gonzaga derailed them at the last second, whether it was the Suggs 3 or the tournament the prior year before with Drew Timme kind of going to work in the paint there. This was a game where, like you said at the top, UCLA needed to get the monkey off the back. They needed a big-time victory, and they delivered in the final minutes of the ball game. I mean, you talked about it, Sebastian Mack. That and one. We're down 2 at this point. Waning minutes of the game. He has 4 points the entire game, and he gets 3 of them at the free throw line right there. Mack is the unsung hero. We talked about it, at length yesterday in the car ride home. Eric Daly Jr., we're going to get to, maybe the most versatile player on the team. I think Kobe Johnson might be the best player on the team. And Bilodeau, the best pure scorer. He kind of had a dud out there yesterday. We got to see a little bit more of Bilodeau as we get into Big Ten play. I thought that was a game we needed him, and, luckily the rest of the team stepped up. But he didn't kind of reach the standard we're used to seeing with a guy like Bilodeau. But Sebastian Mack, he has the heart of the team on his sleeve. And the way he gets into the lane, I mean, he makes the defense react in just different areas. That was a perfect example of what we're talking about. He is so confident with the basketball, and it feels like he's the only guy that really drives to the basket with a lot of confidence. And that just kind of allows the rest of the offense to flow very seamlessly, draws defenders in the paint. He can kick it out to the corner if it's not working. He can go up, draw a foul. He can make a play at the rim. But Sebastian Mack's and one was the play of the game. And how nervous were you, Madman? I mean, we're sitting right there. Nembhard drives the length of the court, gets the and one to tie the game, potentially tie the game at the free throw line. He eventually misses. So you're kind of thinking in your back of your head, are we going to blow this thing again? But, the heroes of the game, man, you nailed it. Kobe Johnson and Eric Daly. Eric Daly, this is the best game he's had as a Bruin thus far. 18 points, 6 rebounds. I mean, he was a defensive dynamo. He led all players with 4 steals in this game. He was outstanding. The 2 threes, he hit the 3 and then pointed right to Norm Powell, which was right.
I thought he pointed to us, Will, personally, but, we were joking with Norm. We're like, Norm, that was for you, not for us, yeah.
Norm was laughing along with us, which was great. But Eric Daly, I just was blown away by what this guy can potentially mean to this team because, in a game where we needed somebody to step up, he was great. And a guy that we didn't really talk about either, I think Sky Clark has been outstanding for this basketball team. I mean, we talk about it, man. The last 4 games, 10 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. He nearly had a triple-double yesterday, kind of establishing himself as the lead facilitator, was near double digits in assists. UCLA, just the clutch, crunch time play and just gutting out a victory. I just think the sky's the limit for this team like we've been talking about all offseason. The pieces are in play to make another Final Four run. Can they get out there and seize it? This was a big step forward in them doing that, Madman.
In a big step in the right direction, indeed, Will. So much of what you said, there's a lot of wisdom there that I want to unpack. One is, the play of Sebastian Mack. And, you look up at the box score, and you're like, holy cow, he had 4 points on 1 out of 7 last night. It doesn't feel that way at all because you said it. When he gets into the game, and I think the move to have him be 6th man as opposed to sort of a lead 2 guard last year, I think has been so significant because he can just come in the game and focus on attacking the basket, getting points, changing the energy of the game. We talked a lot about down the stretch, the final few minutes, particularly that and one. I thought, Will, another key stretch was really that second 10 minutes of the first half because we were looking up. It was 11-7 Gonzaga with about 9 minutes to go until halftime. UCLA really struggling to kind of get anything going. Mack comes in, and just his ability to get to the rim, play some bully ball, being aggressive, putting the onus on the officials, putting the defense on their heels, set up open threes, open opportunity, created space offensively for UCLA. So even when he's not hitting shots, his ability, his activity, it reminds me so many. I'm going to go way back here, Will. the Sixers of the early 2000s with Allen Iverson. And you sometimes don't, quantify his impact by field goal percentage. I mean, there were nights where AI had some rough nights from the field, but Philly said, look, part of our offense is just getting him shots so we can get the offensive rebounds. We can crash that glass. We can sort of get movement. And in so many ways, Mac is sort of like that because it's really his activity really springboards this team moving forward. So I think the more we see Mac kind of firmly establish himself as that primary aggressor, the better it's going to be for UCLA. I thought, Will, this was sort of a key victory because of the matchup with Bilodeau. This was a game, Graham Ike, 24 points, 8 rebounds on the other side. I mean, Ike looked like a lottery pick, Will. And this was going to be a tough matchup for him. Bilodeau was out-physicaled. He had a lesser of a wingspan, not quite as athletic. You knew this was going to be sort of a tough game where Bilodeau was going to get bottled up. So did UCLA have enough outside of Bilodeau to be able to come through? And that's where Daly Jr. was absolutely significant in the first half and the second half, kind of getting to the rim, hitting those threes. And then those 4 second-half threes, Will, by Kobe Johnson, particularly those first 2 in the first 90 seconds of the second half, I thought really changed the energy of the game back into UCLA's favor. And like you and I talked about, I think just Sky Clark, that activity and that action of being the floor general, he had a nice left-to-right crossover pulled up, in that first half. Found some guys, he's always cutting to the basket as well. So just his movement, I think, is significant. I think there's still some work to be done here, Will, offensively, of kind of finding more of an offensive identity. But I think they can do that over the course of the conference season. And what I loved is they were better from 3 and they were better from the line in this game. 12 for 24 from 3. They were 50%, 13 for 18 from the line, which is better. Yeah. Mac had those 2 misses before that N1, which felt really big. But outside of that, they were hitting their threes to be able to hitting their free throws to be able to close out this game. And then the rule I always have, Will, is do you have 2 perimeter guys in double figures? Between Mac, Andrews, Stefanovic, and Clark, are 2 of those 4 guys going to get you double figures? And they were just able to do that. Clark with the 11, Stefanovic with the 10. So really exciting here, Will, moving forward. I do think the sky is the limit. You and I both agree there with this versatility. With this defense, with this depth, I think this is now I think the key moving forward, Will, is Cronin going to find the right rotational pieces? We're playing 10. Guys are starting to slot into their roles, but can those roles be even further defined moving forward, and a little bit more decisiveness offensively in key moments, which I think they'll sort of, once they get those roles, that'll slot in, and this is a Final Four caliber team. So, Will, before we jump from the hardwood to the gridiron, anything else you want to add about this team, this game, and moving forward?
I've got a comp for you. And, it's usually football we talk about on this show, at least in the past. Is Sebastian Mack the Jay Toia of this basketball team?
Stat line, I love that. I love that.
Stat line, you don't really – the impact is not reflective of what was in the box score. And for me, the first 10 minutes of that game – you were joking with me. It's like, hey, this is the first quarter of the Rams-Cardinals right now across the street. It was 7-7 with, I think 10 minutes into the ball game or something like that. But Matt came in, and after that, you saw the offense start to relax and, really make an effort to start making more shots out there. And I think that's directly linked to Sebastian Mack. I think this 6-man role is as perfect as it can be with it. And, before we move to football, man, just – how versatile this team can be. You need size. We'll throw Mara out there.
Totally.
You need more guard play. Let's pull off a McDonald's All-American and Trent Perry off the bench. You can find your guards. Stefanovic, I mean, what a luxury to have this guy off the bench, too, in a lot of different scenarios. So this team is just loaded, man. You got to find that perfect 5. I think Sky Clark really made an effort to kind of solidify that 4th spot. We knew who the big 3 were: Bilodeau, Daly, and Kobe. I think Sky's going to be that guaranteed guard. I'm not as confident in Dylan Andrews kind of holding down that last spot. I'd be keeping an eye out on Trent Perry, similar to what, Amari Bailey did a couple of years ago, where Bailey was too good to keep off the floor. I know how Mick, likes the upperclassmen when it comes to this, but Trent Perry in limited doses is so good. I'd even be in favor of Stefanovic being out there maybe as a starter, given his pedigree for shooting the basketball. So there's a lot to talk about there. And the last shout out I got to give, Eric Daly Jr., man.
Absolutely.
I mean, we talked about the game he's had. Do you know what he's shooting from 3-point percentage this year through 13 games?
It's in the 40s. I mean, he's
48.1%, dude. He's 15 of 31 on the season. The guy needs to let it fly a little bit more right now. This is some heat check type of stuff we're seeing from Eric Daly. So UCLA basketball is in good hands right now, and we're just about to enter Big Ten play. Let's get that 1 seed, baby. Let's keep the foot on the gas pedal.
Let's do it. And Thrill, I'll tell you, I love the Mac Toia comp. That's fantastic because it's the hockey assist, right? It's Toia's impact on the gridiron was so significant, and it enabled the Madranos, and it enabled the Schlesingers, and it enabled the Femis to be able to do their thing, much in the same way with Mac. You're not always going to see it. Look, he is the third leading scorer on the team at 9.8 a game, but his activity creates so much for this offense. If Sky Clark is that true traditional point guard, Mac is kind of that offensive energizer, if you will, to really kind of get space, get movement, get energy. So what a phenomenal comp there, Will. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think the key now is going to be Clark at the 1 feels really good. Kobe at that 2-3 spot feels really good. Yeah. Daly at the 4, Bilodeau at that 4-5. You're set there. Who's going to be your 2? I don't think you want to bring Mac into the starting lineup, to our point. I think that sixth man role just feels really good where he can just focus on being aggressive. So it comes down to, do you go Trent Perry? Do you go Stefanovic? Do you maybe go, a big? Do you go sort of bigger in some cases? Maybe it's sort of by committee. But I think it's an interesting one there, Will, where Stefanovic kind of gives you the shooting and the veteran presence. Perry could give you a ton of upside if he sort of grows into sort of his body and into the energy and the pace of the game. He had that terrific N1 yesterday. Yeah. And maybe, just maybe, Mick learns from some of the years past, right? What was some of the critique there? Bailey finally worked his way into the starting lineup, but a lot of people felt like it took too long. We had Peyton Watson, and he was very underutilized a couple of years ago. So does Mick learn a little bit and say, hey, maybe I bring this youth in and have my veteran leadership kind of fortify the bench? So I think that 2 spot, once we sort of solidify there, this is a Final Four team, no question about it. So terrific analysis as always, Thriller, and can't wait for the next games that you and I are going to go to together at Pauley and beyond. And as we swing now to the gridiron, Thriller, it has been, as you've been following closely, what an incredible last few weeks it's been in the transfer portal for UCLA, the number 4 transfer portal class in the country. We've sort of talked about it on this show at length. A lot of emphasis on the offensive line, a lot of emphasis on the defensive line, and then the secondary has been absolutely significant. Then we got Isaiah Chisholm from Oregon State at linebacker to sort of fortify there. We got some guys in the pipeline. But the big news yesterday, which was the question, and I want to sort of focus the conversation there, Joey Aguilar, 2-year starter from Appalachian State, confirms his commitment to UCLA. Aguilar comes in, Will, 13-11 as a starter over the 2 years at Appalachian State, 6,760 yards passing, 56 touchdowns, 23 interceptions. He comes in 6'3", 220, so a little bit thicker, a little bit sort of lower to the ground, but a ton of experience. Now you bring in Aguilar, Will, into that room that's very, very deep, but very, very young. You've got Luke Duncan, Demarcus Davis, you got Hasselbeck, you got McDaniel. What is your impression now of this quarterback room? How do you see this thing play out ultimately as to who the signal caller for the Bruins is going to be in 25?
Yeah, and they landed a guy that's very, very talented. I mean, this guy was Sunbelt's newcomer of the year a couple of years ago. Close to 7,000 yards passing, 56 touchdowns, 24 interceptions. I think he brings an element of security where it's like, I've been the guy. I know what happens. I think Wayne Cook brought up a really good point on this show a couple weeks ago where these quarterbacks look really good in practice. And, you and I really like Luke Duncan. It's completely different when you can actually blitz the quarterback and you take the hit. So as much as I like these young quarterbacks, having a guy that's been there, that's been the starter, that's been the guy to lead them down the field for a game-leading drive or whatever it may be, that stuff matters in football. And with Aguilar, he brings that to the table. I know Deshaun and his staff were really looking to fortify that room with a guy that can lead the table for UCLA. And, they do have a very deep quarterback room behind them, but I think the good thing about this is you probably throw Aguilar out there. He's the default starter as it stands. if it doesn't go right, you have a lot of talented guys waiting in the wings to kind of get their, opportunity with UCLA. We're very high on Demarcus Davis. Hasselbeck, he's the son of freaking Matt Hasselbeck. There's NFL lineage in that room. So there's a lot of guys that could step up and make plays. I'm cautiously optimistic with Aguilar, though. And I think after last year, where you and I, we saw the additions to the offensive line. I'm not going to name any names here. But you and I, in our mind, were like, hey, we can cross off our issues with the offensive line. We've solved those problems. That was a lesson for me in terms of the transfer portal, where it's like, just because these guys may have been starters at low level places,
yes,
come to a different school, that doesn't necessarily mean that the success will immediately translate. And, with Aguilar, he put up big numbers, but it was Appalachian State. You know what I mean? Not to, down anything from Appalachian State. One of the most beautiful football stadiums in all of college football. I know they won 9 games a couple of years ago, but that's a huge jump to the Big Ten, a conference that has 4, teams in the college football playoff this year. So we'll see how that translates out. But I'm cautiously optimistic because, we saw this with Collin Schlee a couple of years ago.
Yep.
You know what I mean? With a quarterback that transferred from Toledo,
Great
had
point.
starting experience. Hell, he even started a game against Georgia and didn't even look that bad. But when you brought him to a bigger situation, the pressure was a little bit too much for him to kind of master that. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I think it's a good ad in terms of just having a guy you could throw out there in the first few weeks and kind of work around. So to kind of put it bluntly, man, it's very similar to what we're dealing with at the 2-guard spot at UCLA.
Right.
You got to have the default starter out there, but you're going to have to work through it if you want to reach that ceiling of a team for UCLA moving forward at Aguilar.
No, Will, I think it's a great point, and particularly about kind of the historical context with, say, a Schlee and some others. The lower level, the non-Power 4 translation doesn't always hit, and I think that's really key. The one thing I'll say is I would imagine that Deshaun, Sunseri, and staff would say, look, come here for the opportunity to start at a place like UCLA, in a city like Los Angeles, #1 public institution in the world, and all of the bells and whistles that UCLA provides. Think about what a staggering jump that is from Appalachian State to a place like UCLA. I don't think necessarily, though, that they've promised him the starting job, nor should they. I think this is an opportunity for Aguilar to come and compete with these young guys, because I think the one thing that was missing in this QB room, Will, to your point, was a lot of depth, a lot of talent, but it was experience, right? None of those guys have started a college football game. So that's a little bit of a dangerous place to be in your quarterback room also, right? You want somebody there that has at least kind of taken a snap at this level. It might not have been at a Power 5 level, but somewhere in between high school and where you are. So I think Aguilar brings that experience. But Will, to your point, if I look at just sort of the raw physicality of these guys as from a prospect standpoint. Now, Sunseri's going to have to get into the shop and refine these guys. When I look at Luke Duncan, Will, he reminds me so much of Curtis Rourke at Indiana. Like, it's such a seamless transition when you talk about just his size, the arm strength, the release. He's a pure pocket passer. That would be a kind of a seamless transition if you're Sunseri. And then if you're Sunseri, you look at a guy like Demarcus Davis at 6'5". He's a little bit lanky. He reminds me so much, Will, of Hundley in his redshirt year, before he filled out a little bit. And so if Sunseri wants a little bit more of a dual threat and wants to be able to kind of open up the playbook, to me, it still feels like Duncan and Davis are popping out. I think in an ideal world, you'd want McDaniel to sort of redshirt and just sort of kind of learn the ropes a little bit as a true 17, 18-year-old. But he's going to jump in. And then Hasselbeck sort of has that moxie, right? We saw it in the spring last year too, Will, right? He's like calling guys out. He's bringing guys into the huddle, doing all of these things. So they all bring kind of a unique skill set. But I think as long as they go into this spring saying the quarterback position is wide open, every guy has an opportunity to compete, I think Aguilar is a good get. I think you don't want to make the mistake that you did. And this was a totally different situations. I think when we got Dante Moore, there was so much pressure. It felt like, given the NIL amount, given sort of him being 5-star, given all of the accolades and the decoration around him prior to coming to Westwood, there felt like such a pressure that he had to play at some point. You don't get that sense with Aguilar, right? It's a totally different prospect, totally different situation. So hopefully it's a nice ad moving forward. The other, get, Will, from yesterday, was Mikey Matthews, speedster, formerly of Cal as well as Utah, over 600 yards receiving in his career, 3 touchdowns, also a very prominent punt return individual. And so you bring kind of the shifty, wiry Mikey Matthews into that wide receiver room now with Gilmer, with Flores, with TMA, and now with Jaden Wilson from Arkansas. And UCLA continues to sort of flesh out that wide receiver room in addition to everyone else that they have. So that number 4 transfer ranking, Will, is certainly going to sort of stabilize. It may even go up in the weeks to come. In totality now, Will, kind of zooming out, how do you see these additions? Is there a prospect or two in particular you're really excited about? Is there still maybe an area of need that you're seeing? Just overall impressions of the transfer portal class.
Yeah, man. So many points you laid out there so nicely. And, with Mikey Matthews, I'll kind of start there. I just think that's a perfect wide receiver ad. Rico Flores was a guy that I would have pegged unanimously to be entering the portal because, 3 games in, it's not going well at UCLA. He's playing well, but the rest of the team is struggling through that tough 4-game stretch. And we just don't hear from him for the rest of the year. So I'm going, he's saving his eligibility. He's going to be entering the portal. Rico Flores coming back is a huge victory.
Huge.
For UCLA. Huge victory. I mean, this guy was Notre Dame's second leading receiver 2 years ago, a team that just missed the college football playoff. They're back this year with a team that is in the college football playoff. So a lot of talent there with Rico. But, to add to your point, and I always like to break this down in my madman frame of thinking. I really love what Deshaun is doing with the portal, and I'll tell you why. He's going to grab guys that are either immediate players that will threaten to start for this team. Whether it's Armella, coming from Florida State on the offensive line, or, it's Chisholm, the linebacker coming, from Oregon State. Outside of those guys, he's getting high pedigree players, 4-star former guys from high school with a lot of eligibility left. So if they're not going to start right away, if they're developed properly, there's a place where these guys can be legitimate all Big Ten selections down the line if they reach that ceiling that they were recruited at. Brooks, the O-lineman from Oklahoma, had 1 year of eligibility redshirted. I mean, to me, that's still the biggest get in the portal because this guy, according to ESPN, was a top 50 recruit, top 100 on 3. What was the biggest problem last year with this team? It was unequivocally the offensive line. Unequivocally the offensive line. So when you're getting these type of guys in there, Cortland Ford, I mean, he just started, 7-8 games for Kentucky in the SEC this past year. That's a guy that I feel confident at. He's played at the highest level possible. He can come in and play. So when you have these type of guys coming in there, I just think the strategy that Deshaun has kind of laid out there for UCLA, it's like, hey, we're going to get guys that can, start immediately or, potentially threaten to start immediately. Or we're going to get guys where, hey, it may take us a year to develop, but given their pedigree as prospects, Aaron Williams was a 4-star guy, the Louisville corner coming in. The Miami corner, the young kid that just committed.
Stafford,
4-star guy. These are guys that had, a ton of offers out of high school. These are talented players. Let them develop in this system and kind of see where we're going. We got Coach Meat out there recruiting damn near half the class with the secondary, man. I've never seen so many secondary players committed to one transfer portal team. So it's just really awesome to see what they're doing in the portal. Whether that translates to results or not, I don't know. And I'll just leave you with one more point. In college, it's about development, man. It is all about development and how you can get these guys to their ceiling. And in recent years, Kirkwood was a legitimate 4-star guy. Jalen Davies was too. He was a top 100 prospect. Those guys didn't necessarily reach their ceiling, and it goes with the offensive line and, what Bieniemy was doing with the offense. I think where we struggled with those guys in the past, whether it was Bieniemy or Juan Castillo on the offensive line, they're used to the NFL mind state of you're pretty much developed.
Yeah, you're ready.
Fully finished product when we get you. When your number is called, whether a guy goes down or you're starting, you're expected to contribute. Whether it's the college level, you can redshirt them, you can develop them, you have to teach them a playbook that, in 99 times out of 100 is much more complicated than a high school thing. It's probably the biggest jump of your football career, if we're being honest. From a physicality standpoint, from how it's played, it's all about development. And I've loved the coaching hires. Tino Sinceri, Look up that guy's background as a coach. Holy cow. I mean, this guy was a GA at Alabama, but his dad was the defensive coordinator for Bill Cowher and Nick Saban. Like, Find me a better coaching lineage than that. Andy Kwan was a GA at Alabama. I want, like, Saban is one of those guys where it's like, I don't care who it is. Like,
any piece of Saban. Exactly.
He's rubbed shoulders with Saban. And I mean, our team across town will tell you, look what he's done for Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian. Like, I've never seen a bigger thing going there. I think the biggest thing that is coming out about this is Lincoln Riley's probably bummed right now when he eventually gets fired from USC. He can't go to the Nick Saban program.
There's no more rehab. No more Saban rehab facility. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, it's just it's really good. I've liked the hires. I think these guys are coaches that are not only skilled in what they do, but they're skilled developers for what they bring to the table. And I just think if you guys can hone in and lock in, this team can make a bowl game next year. And maybe that builds upon itself and we can start getting the 4- and 5-star guys that this fan base believes they can get year in and year out.
No, Will, so well said. And I love the breakdown there where it's guys that are coming in to make an immediate impact, or given the resume, given the pedigree, given the stars, that they'll make an impact eventually. And I think we'll close on this. I'm most excited about the offensive line, to your point, because now when you add an Armella from Florida State, who was highly decorated in the state of Florida, Cortland Ford, to your point, who had started a number of games at Kentucky, and then you add Eugene Brooks, given his decoration at OU. Now you couple them with a Sam Yoon. You got a DeGiorgio. There's more work to be done. This is now turning into, Will, a very solid Big Ten quality offensive line. And when you pair that with who's in the receiving room, and you pair that with a Berger coming back, and you pair that with a Hudson Habermel coming back at tight end, all you need to do now is, from a QB perspective, sort of solidify that, and you should be in a really good spot moving forward. And I expect this team to be threatening for a bowl game next year. And given the schedule being so much easier, in terms of that balance, Will, I think we have a lot to be excited about going into 2025 as a true building block for Deshaun Foster moving forward. So, Thriller, it's so great to see you, brother. Happy holidays. It was such a blast yesterday. So great to hang out. And this goes without saying, you can come back anytime you want to talk about your beloved Bruins. And I'm sure that will be the case over the course of this spring when we talk football as well as Big Ten basketball season. Much love to you, brother. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your holidays with the family. And as always, Bruin Nation, thanks so much for your support. Have a safe, joyous, happy New Year. And we'll see you in a couple days. And as always, 4's up forever.